Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes series, played keeper for Portsmouth under the name A.C. Smith. Dennis Bergkamp would miss away matches because he had a fear of flying, which is why he was called the non-flying Dutchman. When Harry Redknapp was assistant manager at West Ham, he heard a fan abusing striker Lee Chapman during a pre-season friendly against Oxford City. At halftime, he asked the fan to get dressed in the kit and play for the team if he thought he could do better. The fan took up his challenge, played through the second half, and even scored a goal. Garrincha was born with an illness that should have made it impossible for him to walk. Instead, he became incredibly flexible and agile, which helped him while playing football. Robert Lewandowski almost signed for Blackburn Rovers, but a giant ash cloud from Iceland grounded his plane and delayed his transfer. It didn't happen thereafter. Stuart Holden used to play competitive Counter-Strike. Simon Mignolet started his career as a forward, and tried his hand at being a goalkeeper after he was dropped. On the other hand, Fernando Torres started his career as a goalkeeper and later switched to become a striker. Diego Maradona once played for Tottenham Hotspur. Dimitar Berbatov's childhood hero was Alan Shearer, and he used to sleep in a Newcastle shirt when he was young. Blackburn were bankrolled to a Premier League title by Jack Walker, and he was a man who was never afraid to challenge convention. In fact, he offered a 25-year-old Alan Shearer the player-manager job in a desperate attempt to keep him at the club. Barcelona legend Xavi is such a serial winner that when he moved to Qatar he even won the lottery. When Yate Town played Yeovil Town in the FA Cup in 2021, it was the first ever meeting between two sides beginning with Y in English football. Former Chelsea forward Gianfranco Zola did not have an international career that befitted his talent. But he is the owner of one brilliant fact: he is the only player to ever be sent off in a World Cup on his birthday. Probably not the kind of card he was hoping for. Chelsea are the only team to be holders of the Europa League and the Champions League at the same time. In 2012, the Blues won their first Champions League. The following season, the club won the Europa League final on the 15th of May. Given that the Champions League final was due on May 25th, for 10 days only, Chelsea were the holders of both titles. Giuseppe Bergomi played in 4 World Cups but never in a qualifier. Matt Busby played for Manchester City and Liverpool. Yep, the legendary Manchester United manager racked up over 300 appearances as a player for United's 2 biggest rivals before leading the Red Devils to their very first European Cup victory and defining the path that the club would walk down for the following half-century. Nemanja Vidic is the only Premier League winner with a surname made entirely of Roman numerals. V is 5, I is 1, D is 500 and C is 100. In 1967, Wolves, Stoke and Sunderland played domestic football in the USA. The newly formed United Soccer Association lifted whole teams from Europe and implanted them to America. Wolverhampton Wanderers, Stoke City and Sunderland were renamed Ella Wolves, Cleveland Stokers and Vancouver Royals respectively, with the squads and coaches going over to compete for these teams. Wolves ended up winning the one and only season the league played. Portsmouth hold the record for having held the FA Cup for the longest, 7 years, despite only winning it once in that time. This was because they won it in 1939 and there was no professional football during the war. Italy hold the record for having held the World Cup for the longest because they won it in 1934 and retained it in 1938 but lost in 1950, which meant they kept the title for 16 years, or 4 tournaments, having only won it twice in that time. New Zealand were the only unbeaten team in the 2010 World Cup. New Zealand's 3 draws weren't enough to see them out of their group. Only one team has ever won the World Cup final playing in red: England. Despite the popularity of the color at club level, no team with red as a first-choice shade has ever won a world title. Fernando Torres was captain of the Atletico Madrid side that Diego Simeone played in. Torres was a young captain at Atletico Madrid, as El Colo was winding down his career at the club. Diego Simeone later managed Torres at Atletico. In 2014, 3 Chelsea goalkeepers were awarded clean sheets in a 0-0 draw with Atletico Madrid. Mark Schwarzer came off the bench to replace Petr Cech in the 18th minute with the score goalless. Schwarzer didn't concede and neither did the Atletico keeper, Thibaut Courtois, who was on loan from Chelsea. David Beckham and David Moyes used to play together. Moyes was at Preston North End from 1993 to 1999, while Beckham played the 1994-95 season at Deepdale on loan from Manchester United. In 1941, Rapid Vienna won the German championship. In fact, that Bundesliga title means that Rapid Vienna have actually won more German titles than Bayer Leverkusen. Javier Mascherano's first game in senior football was for Argentina's national team, not for his club at the time, River Plate. Mascherano was such a wonder kid that his country came calling before his club. In 2010-11, David and James were the most common first names in the Premier League. Coincidentally, this was the first Premier League season without David James. The 1968 European Championship semi-final was decided by a coin toss. Italy beat the Soviet Union on the toss and later won in the final. The last time both European Cup, Champions League finalists had no foreign players in their starting 11 was in 1967. The clash was between Celtic and Inter Milan to find no foreigners in the starting 11 of the two European Cup finalists. While she was a director at Birmingham City, Karen Brady sold her husband Paul Pescasolido to Stoke for £400,000. Ferenc Puskás, the greatest Hungarian footballer ever, played for Spain at the 1962 World Cup. There was no World Cup final in 1950. The format had a Final Four in a group, so while there was a deciding match between Uruguay and Brazil, which became the last time that Brazil would lose at home in competitive football until Germany whipped them 7-1 in 2014. In 1975, the Manchester United goalkeeper, Alex Stepney, dislocated his jaw while shouting at his defenders. Since 1982, at least one Bayern Munich player has played in every World Cup final. Before Alex Ferguson took over at Manchester United, Aston Villa were the more successful club. In 1986, both sides had won European Cup and 7 league titles apiece. However, the Villains had won more FA Cup than the Red Devils. Peter Osgood's ashes are buried under the penalty spot at the shed end of Stamford Bridge. Johan Cruyff played for PSG. Despite being 23 when the club was formed, Cruyff played 2 games with Paris Saint-Germain in 1975. During the Paris tournament, the Dutchman agreed to do so, since he was a fan of designer Daniel Hechter, who was then president of the club and the man who designed those iconic red, blue and white shirts. In 2003, Inter Milan were knocked out of the Champions League on away goals, which was weird, since they were playing AC Milan. Printer Julio Iglesias was once the goalkeeper of Real Madrid. Well, Real Madrid Castilla in the Segunda Division, to be precise. The singer's professional football career was ruined when he was involved in a serious car accident in 1963 that left him unable to walk for 2 years. He later fathered Enrique, who released multiple bangers. Only one of Ruud van Nistelrooy's 150 goals for Manchester United was from outside the box. It was against Charlton Athletic, and if you ever watched the man play, this isn't really much of a surprise. France has a record of firsts when it comes to new technology in the sport. France were awarded the first penalty by VAR at the 2018 World Cup and a group game against Australia. They also had the first goal disallowed by VAR in 2017 against Spain. St Johnstone is the only team in Britain with a J in it. Widzew Łódź is the only club this century to defend the title of second division champion. They won it in 2007-08 and got promoted to Ekstraklasa but were relegated back down immediately due to their involvement in a corruption scandal. The only player to have won European Cup winners' medals with 2 different English clubs is Jimmy Rimmer. He won with Manchester United in 1968 and Aston Villa in 1982. The first World Cup hat-trick and clean sheet were by Americans. United States goalkeeper Jimmy Douglas managed the first clean sheet of the inaugural 1930 tournament in a 3-0 win against Belgium. 4 days later, Bert Payton scored 3 goals in another 3-0 win, this time against Paraguay. In 2003, Franz Beckenbauer threatened the German league with moving Bayern Munich to Italy. The Bayern president made the threat in the wake of Bundesliga administrators accusing his club of financial misdemeanors. Bringing celery to Stamford Bridge is outlawed and could get you a lifetime ban. After a NSFW chant involving the vegetable grew in popularity in the 2000s, fans began chucking it onto the pitch, which was swiftly banned by the club. Coventry City did not finish in the top 6 of any division between 1970 and 2018. The Arsenal captain always chooses the length of the entire team's sleeves for the game. The white sleeves were introduced by legendary manager Herbert Chapman to help the Gunners stand out from other teams. These days, it's common for the Arsenal captain to just choose short sleeves and let the rest of the team wear long-sleeved undershirts should they wish. It was common, however, during the early 2000s for French skippers Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry to choose long sleeves, while preceding captain Tony Adams favored a shorter sleeve.